Hey guys, Duke Delayed here for the Intimacy Liberation Army, and today we got 5 self-reflection questions for knowing yourself. Let's just jump right into it. I took notes this time. So, okay, the first question is, what emotion am I feeling right now, and why? This is going to help you identify and label your emotions. We talked about this a couple days ago in the daily practices one. And if you can label your emotions, it's like, I feel this, and be specific. Like, I feel betrayed, I feel overwhelmed, I feel angry, I feel hurt, right? And you can figure out the specifics of when the emotion that you feel, you put a label on it, and then you can figure out why. Why do I feel this way? Try to stay away from anything that's like blaming and I feel this way because he's an asshole, right? And that's not serving you very well. It may be very well true that he's an asshole, but it's not serving you to think that way. Try to find the reason why you are feeling the way that you feel, because in the real world, there's a whole bunch of interpretations of any particular events that happen. So if if somebody is doing something to you that kind of triggers you from your past or your childhood or your parents or your caretakers or whatever, it's good to know that those people aren't those people, right? People in the social group in high school are not necessarily the people at work. The people at work are not necessarily your girlfriend. They all serve different roles in your life, and you serve different roles in their life. And there are multiple different interpretations on how you can choose to feel in the moment. And if you just sort of feel automatically and it doesn't currently match the situation, then you have communication breakdown and differences in opinion on what those behaviors were meaning at the time. And if you can kind of stop yourself, put a label on, okay, I feel angry because I'm not getting what I expected, then you can dig deeper and be like, okay, well, why did I expect that? Has this person delivered this in the past and then disappointed me, or they never delivered this in the past and I just made the expectation because I was super hopeful that my needs were going to get met in the way that I expected them to get met, but that person has never really been consistent at meeting them that way, and that continues to be a place of frustration. Once you label that and you figure out why you feel the way that you feel, you can do something about it, because then chances are you can add some clarity to the conversation. You can set boundaries. There's things that you can do once you kind of know why you're angry. And so the first step is, what emotion am I feeling right now, and why? Asking yourself those things, not necessarily even in the moment, but even in a journaling practice later, or after you kind of calm down from a situation, you sort of self-reflecting, ask yourself, why did I feel that emotion, and why? Number 2, what patterns do I notice in my interactions? Very often I run into these things where I kind of flip out for a second, and I've been a lot more stoic lately. I've been pretty controlled in my emotions, not in a way that denies myself, but in a way that is inquisitive and explorative. And if you can ask yourself, what patterns do I notice in my reactions? Over time, you can start catching like, this happens over and over and over again. And it doesn't just happen with this person, it happens with this group of people. It happens in these types of scenarios. And then you can explore what the patterns are. Like, okay, I am constantly feeling undervalued at work. And by undervalued, I mean I feel like I'm not getting respect. By not getting respect, specifically, I am expecting a level of rapport and esteem by my coworkers that I'm not receiving. And you can kind of look at it and be like, I'm never receiving it ever. One of my clients, he started to see the dark underbelly of the game. And he would go out and he'd talk to these girls, and they would just kind of blow him off, and they would kind of toy with him and manipulate and be really nice and girly for a second, and then like turn away and ignore him for a bit just to see how he's going to react. And then I said, yeah, that's normal. Like, people are always pinging and testing each other to see how aligned they are. And sometimes when that alignment's off, they can control you. And sometimes when that alignment's off, they're disgusted by you. They don't want to be around you. They feel like it's too much voodoo, or there's too much complications to deal with any of that. So he was saying, I see it now. Like, I'm 30 years old, and ever since high school, I've been running into the same thing with girls, and I kept thinking that they were all like these beautiful pedestalized angels, and they would never do anything to hurt anybody. And so if they hurt anybody, it must be because I'm horrible and bad. And that's a very powerful belief system to hold for 20 years of your life, right? Like that dictates all of your behaviors, and it's not necessarily true. Like, there are some cases where a perfectly nice and innocent and beautiful human decides to be mean for a second for whatever reason, and that's not typical of their normal everyday thing. It's also true that some people are just selfish and manipulative and full-blown liars and betrayers, and they do that on a constant basis. And not to demonize or vilify them, because they, all intentions come from a good place, whether that good place is survival or trauma mitigation or avoiding conflict or whatever. But they may do that all the time with everybody, and you're no different. And for you to be expected to be different, then you got your feelings hurt, right? Like, it's not necessarily absolute. But if you start to notice the patterns and why you keep feeling this way in those environments or with those types of people, then you can address it and do something about it. It's very difficult to change other people's behavior over the long term. We're going to talk about a lot of quick, like emotional spiking, manipulation, dark stuff later on in the year, as I'm talking about, gaslighting and manipulation and all that stuff. But the breaking of rapport and the breaking of trust with those tactics are very short-lived. Like, you can get power fast, right? And sometimes you need it. Sometimes you need to break rapport and make people fear you, or make people afraid they're going to lose out on something or whatever, in order to get what you want done in the moment. But you're not going to create a long-term trust relationship that's going to allow them to keep coming back over and over again, unless you severely beat down their self-esteem and self-worth and make them feel like your goals are always more important than theirs. And that's just generally not good practice for longevity, right? Even in a controlling, gaslighting, narcissistic relationship, they've got to keep you under their thumb, and that's a lot of effort in order to maintain some sort of compliance. And what they're generally hoping is that you eventually just give up and become docile, right? Like, be like the elephant who won't break the rope to get off the post, right? That's like the ideal situation, because the hardcore narcissist is not going to want to put up with having to keep maintaining that thing. If the old tactics aren't working, they generally tend to flip the fuck out. So all the way back to the thing, reflect on your patterns. Figure out what are my patterns of behavior in these types of situations, what's common in between these things, because that can help you modify your own behavior in that moment, choose a better option for next time. Number 3, how do my actions align with my core values? Okay, so this is part of this whole self-reflection, self-awareness thing. If you don't have core values, or if you're not aware, you have them, but if you're not aware of what they are, then it's very difficult for you to judge your behavior and fit it into a framework where you can expect yourself to be consistent. Like, if you're going to set boundaries verbally only when you're angry, and then you're going to fold over and not enforce them when you're not angry, then people can recognize those patterns and then just realize that if they just avoid making you angry, they can basically get you to do whatever they want, because you're going to be nice and accommodating and whatever. And they learn that very quickly. You learn that very quickly when somebody else is like that. So if you don't have values in relationships, or if you're not aware of them, take the exercise of going into your journal. I'm always doing the get into your journal thing. I fucking journal every goddamn day for pages. And go into your journal and be like, look, what are my top 5 core values in relationships. Do I want honesty? Do I want respect? Do I want collaboration and co-creation? Do I want growth? Do I want connection as a primary motivator? Right? Like, uh, I think we'll get into the whole 5 human needs thing later on. But basically, you want only a few things from people, right? You want connection, growth, certainty, uncertainty, and contribution, right? No, it's 6 human needs. What was the other one? Connection, growth, certainty, uncertainty, contribution. It'll come to me. Like I said, we'll do that video later. But you only want a few things from people, and so what's your highest value? What is the highest? Like, my highest value is growth, and my second highest value is connection. It's I want us to be in sync as we're facing the challenges of the world in a long-term relationship. Very often, in a short-term relationship, something I just met, I move to connection and uncertainty. Uncertainty, I like the variety of meeting with different types of people, seeing all their different um, the worldviews and outlooks and value systems. Like, I enjoy exploring that with other people and not really taking it all personally. And so uncertainty or variety becomes my highest need in most surface level interactions. But then I move into connection, and then once I get to connection, then I'm looking for growth. I don't really need to stay aligned as long as we're attacking the world together. So I know that about myself, and so when I have a long-term relationship that I'm carrying and I'm leading, I'm usually leading in the connection place. And I had to go look at my patterns of behaviors for a long time, because my want for connection actually manifested as a need for attention, and so I would forego attention or I would forego respect, collaboration, co-creation for attention. As long as you were attending to me, then you could basically do whatever you wanted. And I realized I was broken over the years, and I was like, oh shit, like, attention is not actually that valuable. What I need is connection. I need us to be on the same page. I don't need us to agree on everything, but I need you to know how I'm feeling. I need to know how you're feeling, so that I can make decisions better, since I'm leading most of the relationship interactions. So knowing that about myself has helped me change my communication style and be more clear, and be more articulate about my feelings and what I need, and what I would desire in the future, and the timelines and the expectations, so that I don't get disappointed when I'm excited and all the love chemicals are firing off in my head. You know, I'll meet a girl and I'll get all Twitter pated, and I fall in love like with every other fucking girl I meet, which is great. But then once we start to communicate and we start to sync and connect, then I will be very clear about what I expect to the next stage. And I'm pretty granular about it, since I've been a professional at this for a long time, and sometimes they see their way off my path, and sometimes they stay on my path for a while, and that way we can co-create a new path together. I'm not having anybody knock me out from following them around their path anymore. I did that for years, and I am over that, because other people's paths are way more boring than my path. Anyway, and variety is my thing, so being bored is so lame. But yeah, so write down your top 5 values in relationships, and then you can use them as a guide for whether or not your behaviors are matching your core values. The question was, do my behaviors match my core values? If you don't know what your core values are, figure out what they are. And then, what are my top 5 core values in relationships? For me, now it's connection, growth, respect, which is really a form of connection. Like, we're on the same page and stuff, and so you expect me to make my decisions consistent with how I've communicated to you. And my love language is physical touch, and so if you're not affectionate in that way to me, then we're going to have a conversation about how we can move that forward, because especially, like, for me, monogamy doesn't make sense if you're not going to fulfill those needs, right? Like, if you feel like withholding or punishing using sex and physical intimacy as a weapon, I'm not interested in growing with you. I'm not interested in connecting with you because your strategy and my strategy are diametrically opposed. So figure out whether your behavior is on your 5 values. And let's say you value honesty in relationships. Do you value honesty in relationships only when the other person's honest? Are you honest in the relationship? Because very often, especially anxious attached people, they lie to themselves all the time. They gaslight themselves into, well, so the other side. But when I was more on the anxious attached side, I would gaslight myself into thinking everything was okay and adjust my speak my expectations into the world as if they were going to manifest, right? And very often I would pretend to be okay with something, and I actually believed in the moment that I was okay with it and allow things to slide and give people the benefit of the doubt. But the problem was that because I wasn't clearly expressing my needs, I was actually being dishonest. And that dishonesty made other people think that what they were doing was just fine, and it was not met with any resistance from my part because I was very conflict avoidant. And there's no need for me to expect people to respect me in the way that I expect to be respected if I've never told them given them the map or the strategy on how to do that for me. And so me lying to myself, being like, I'm okay with this, I'll let it slide. They'll deal with it later, or they'll get me on the back end or whatever. Without communicating what I wanted and needed, they were oblivious. And I spent a long time just justifying and being like, look, this is the right way to treat people. So they probably know that already. So if they fuck up, I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt for fucking up. And they're going to come back on the right path. But the problem is that not everybody thinks that way. Like, there's no one right way to treat people. I thought there was. And so then I just was real disappointed when people didn't do it. But those are my expectations not being expressed, and I was sitting there gaslighting myself, not being honest with myself, and be like, I am not okay with this, and this is why I feel this when this happens, and I'm anxious about it, and it fucks my whole world up for half an hour, and I wasn't honest with myself. I was like, no, it's cool, it's chill, it's okay, because I was conflict avoidant, and then when I started realizing that, like, okay, I need to clearly communicate, I'm feeling this, without any blame. I was just like, look, I'm feeling this way because this happened, because my understanding of it went to this place. It's like, I feel really hurt that you won't make time for me. I feel like, I know you're really busy, but I feel like I should be a priority in these ways. And she'll turn around and be like, you are a priority. You're like the most important thing in my life. And I'm like, well, I don't feel that way. Because I'm looking for physical touch, I'm looking for quality time, I'm looking for these things that I haven't gotten in my estimation, in a couple weeks, and so I feel like I'm lower on the priority list because that's how I gauge priority. And it's like, oh no, I don't mean for you to feel that way. I'll try to do this or whatever. Like, don't do anything you don't want to do, but know that that's how I like to be loved. So if you can put that in your schedule, that's cool. Then I can give her the benefit of the doubt because she's like, okay, yeah, she'll agree to it, and then maybe she'll fuck up because she's not used to acting in that way because hers is, I don't know, fucking words of affirmation or acts of service, and so she continues to execute acts of service and forgets to do the physical touch thing, and I can give her some leeway on that and just sort of gently remind, oh yeah, I'd certainly like to be touched a lot more. Because that really shows the affection to me, and that's how I do it. And I really thank you for the acts of service that you provided, but it just doesn't get my motor running the same way. And that kind of communication, although it seems a little combative, it actually reduces conflict in the future because everything's more clear and out on the table. Some days, people won't have the capacity to meet your needs because they're dealing with their own bullshit. And if they know what your needs are, because you've clearly communicated, they can be like, look, I can't give you what you need today. I'm overwhelmed and whatever. And then you can adjust your expectations accordingly and not get all fucking silently butthurt when people are not meeting your needs in the way that you wanted to, because they know what they are, and they're realizing they're dropping the ball, and they're able to communicate that. So, how do my actions align with my core values? Write down your 5 core values. Figure that out, and then What's the fifth one? Oh no, the fourth one. What role am I playing in my current challenges? Okay, this is a good one. So very often, uh, the big problem is we think we're right, and we're not, because there's such a variety among humans. That's what makes relationships so exciting, and it's so difficult as well. Um, like, if you could just predict everything that your partner or the new person that you just met is going to do, then it would be relatively boring, right? Like you couldn't deal with the drama of it all. And if you expected them to just act the way that you wanted them to act all the time, you would get really bored with that too. You would be like, oh, you'd slot them in as like a, what do you call it? Like it's like a commodity, right? If you just fucking go about your life, living your own life, and they never have their own identity in it, and they're just trying to please you all the time, you're actually gonna get bored of that shit. So um, very often, the conflict that you have and the challenges that you have in relationships are, it takes two to tango, right? You fucking are miscommunicating or not being clear or masking or stonewalling or hiding things, right? And they are miscommunicating and not being clear and stonewalling, masking and hiding things. And so with that juxtaposition of the two manipulation control structures end up fucking mismatching quite a bit. And very often you have a role in co-creating that challenge. They're not always to blame all the time, and you're not always to blame all the time either. You got super low self-esteem, and you're like, I just fucked up again, and now I gotta fucking claw my way back and all this shit. Like, okay, great, like, maybe true, but it's not true all the fucking time. Most of the time, it's 50-50. If you're communicating and not setting expectations correctly, and then they don't understand the expectation, your role in that thing is that you need to fucking probably communicate more clearly, and then they can decide whether or not they want to acquiesce to your requests or demands. But if you're not communicating that stuff and you're just expecting them to know and mind read you, you're going to create those communication inconsistencies that are going to make things a little bit more difficult. Like I said, life is suffering and difficult, and I would rather face it with somebody who's on the same page as me, by dealing, like, at least at home or with this person. I don't have to deal with suffering and craziness and difficulty. We can do this together and face the challenges of the world together. And that works across organizations. And I used to work for these charity organizations that would go out and try to help a bunch of people. And everybody's got to be on the same page. There's like straight SOPs and fucking for nonprofits. There's like all these rules that you have to follow to be everybody plays nice. If you go to work and you work in a corporation, there's going to be rules from HR. The fucking company manual is like 180 pages. Like, there's people have defined what expectations should be in that environment, and that your relationship is your romantic and your sexual and your intimate relationships are some of the most important relationships you're going to carry, except for the relationship with yourself. And so, why not have a fucking 180-page manual for that too, and be aware of those things? That relationship with yourself also needs a fucking manual. Because when you break the rules, what are the consequences? You can't just sit around thinking, like, whatever I do is fine, and there's no fucking repercussions and reflections into the world. But very often, the world is reflecting you. If you're getting betrayed and dishonest and whatever all the time, very often you're dishonest with yourself, or you're betraying yourself in one way or another. And if you can't recognize those patterns, you can't see that shit, then it's very difficult to know what role you're playing in causing the challenges in your relationships. Try to stay away from blame, right? Because, it's just not helpful. Like, don't blame them, don't blame you. Don't just sit around and be like, oh, it's your fault, and you did this, and you always do this. No, none of that bullshit. Just fucking be like, okay, what role did I play in creating that challenge, and what can I do differently in the future that might bring a better result? When you ask yourself those kinds of questions, your brain will come up with answers that are going to be different than, why do I always fuck up so bad? When am I going to lose this relationship because I'm such a fuck up? Like, those questions will get answers as well. So you might as well ask the questions that are useful for growth or useful for co-creation. Because if you if you continue to ask limiting questions like, why am I such a fuck up? Why do I keep doing this? Then you have to justify yourself later and then create an identity that like doesn't get you very far in the connection and human social connection realm. So try to stay away from blame. Be like, what could I do differently next time to get better results, or how could I take it further next time so that we get deeper? And so ask yourself those questions. Number 5, the last one. What do I need right now to feel balanced? And this is stuff that you can control. If you're like, oh, I just had a conflict with my partner, what do I need right now to feel balanced? I need them to fucking apologize and never do it again. That's what I need to feel balanced. That is not useful because you can't change other people's behavior. It's not true, but in a long-term report-driven thing, I'll explain that in way deep detail at some point. But you can just operate on the assumption that you can't change other people's behavior, at least not for very long. And so ask yourself, what can you control to make yourself feel balanced? And generally, it's self-honesty, self-care, self-awareness, self-reflections, self-intention, right? Getting yourself into the headspace of like, okay, what do I need to feel balanced? If you're feeling overwhelmed, do you need to take some time for yourself? If you're feeling like you're constantly putting your neck out for people and they're not reciprocating, why do you need to stop putting your neck out for people? Why are you doing that? Is it just because you want their approval? Is it because you want them not to leave you, or you have an abandonment wound you haven't taken care of? Like, figure that out. Like, most of the time, you can do something to make yourself feel a little bit more, not in control, but in balance, where people are not taking advantage of you because you just refuse to get taken advantage of. It's pretty simple to be like, oh yeah, you should come with us on Saturday. I actually have other plans. Sorry. And they're like, oh no, what are those plans? You don't need to fucking do that. You gotta hang out with us. Why? Like, no, I have plans, so I'm just not gonna come. But thanks for the invite, and feel free to invite me next time. Well, that's really fucked up. I came to your thing. Okay, well, that's a weird thing to say to somebody who's busy. I had plans. And then, so you get that little bit of conflict, and they get huffy, and then they leave. And then you go, huh, I didn't have to do something I didn't want to do. You have a whole night free. You can do whatever the fuck you want to do and save that time and your energy for yourself when you were busy trying to make people happy all the time before. The one thing about making people happy is you can't. They have to make themselves happy. And sometimes they use you as a vehicle to do that. But you don't have control over that situation. No matter how hard I tried as a full-blown hardcore people pleaser to make people happy, they were happy when they were happy, and they were not happy when they were not happy. And generally, all of my efforts, no matter how deeply I fucking overthought it, only was a very temporary fix. And so once I realized that, then I was like, oh, well, why am I not making myself happy first? Because that's generally infectious. We'll talk about that next month on the influencing other people section. So yeah, those are the 5 questions. What emotions am I feeling right now and why? How do my actions align with my core values? What patterns do I notice in my reactions? What role am I playing in my current challenges? And what do I need right now to feel balanced? Ask yourself those questions, do it in a journal, do it in self-reflection, do it in the moment, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for joining me. Click the subscribe button and the little bell icon so you can get notified when I release this shit, and that's going to be 24 hours from now. Until then, stay awesome.